All right, I think we are live. So I'm excited today to do our DB Impact Live with Brooke Unruh. She is an attorney and owns Unruh and Co. And I was introduced to Brooke kind of how I've been getting introduced to a ton of people, which is through some social media posts and things of that nature. And so I'm really excited to talk with you today, Brooke, just about your journey into business ownership and a little bit more about your background. So I appreciate you taking the time today with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You bet. Let's dive into, why don't you give everybody just a little bit more about your background, and kind of a little bit more about your journey into starting your own business.
Okay, well, I've been practicing law for about 20 years in Oklahoma, which is hard to believe, but for the first 13, 14 years of my practice, I practiced strictly in the area of oil and gas title examination. That is just a very specialized area of law, and it's unique to oil and gas producing states. It was a great career and gave me a great foundation of learning about how families pass on assets, particularly in my case, oil and gas assets, when an owner passes away, and specifically how that asset transfers when an owner does not have the proper estate plan in place. And it really set me up to transition into the areas of estate planning and probate law here in Oklahoma, which I made that switch in 19, and I have been operating my own firm since that time, and it's really taken off. It's been a fun journey. It's been a way to use all the prior knowledge that, I accumulated over those years of doing oil and gas title work and get to help mineral owners and families untangle heirship and family ownership messes. And the result of that is that we can help these families get their royalty interests into pay status with the oil and gas operator, and then help those heirs, those beneficiaries, plan for these assets in their estates moving forward.
Love it. Yeah, one of the when you and I were talking the last time too, I had kind of asked you like what made you kind of make that jump into doing this on your own, because I think previously you were in more of, I believe, the corporate world like we had talked about. So what was kind of that transition of like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm working, and I like, what was that transition into like, okay, I'm gonna go do this now?
Yeah, I was in-house at a large oil and gas company, which was a fantastic position and a great place to learn and develop the title examination skills I needed to be successful. That company went through, as is very common in the oil and gas industry, a massive layoff in 2013. So a group of us went out and continued to do the same work we were doing and just did it, as part of our own small law firm. That type of work is pretty isolating. You are working on one project by yourself, often for months, and it's very detailed. It was a good fit for me, but I always thought, I'm probably not going to do this forever. I need to have contact with people and I need to help people. That's what really, I would say, propelled me into these practice areas. That combined with the fact that when you rely on the oil and gas industry alone, there are so many ups and downs. You are at the mercy of the market, mergers, acquisitions, so many things. And when it's good, it's good. And the other side of that is that it's very unpredictable. And I wanted to establish something that had a steady workflow where I could use all of that knowledge and be able to help people on a more personal level.
Yeah, and I think too, like the journey in the last time we talked, the journey into kind of starting your own thing is you could be as confident as you can be, right? But there's a lot of that self-doubt or those fears or the things that just come up naturally because it's one of those, like, you're stepping into something that's a little bit new. What were some of those conversations like with family or actually making that decision of just saying like, hey, I'm going to jump and we're going to do this?
Yeah, there were so many times that I could have bought into the negative voices in my head of, well, you're 40. This is what you've been doing for years. You should just stick with what you know. Because how are you going to make a change this late in the game? In my mind, it was late in the game. I now know it's not. It's never too late to make a change. And it felt a little bit like starting over as a new baby attorney. When you're working for corporations and you're established in that really specialized skill set, you don't have to do the face to face contact and level of networking that I've had to do on this side. So that was something that was intimidating to me. And while I craved the client and personal interaction, I think that was also almost a deterrent for me because I had gotten so comfortable at working in a more isolated environment. I will never forget telling my mom and my husband that this is what I wanted to do. And they both said, well, then that's what you're going to do. They kind of
Awesome.
made it like I didn't have a choice, you know? And I knew that if I was going to do it, I had to go all in. So I invested in some good software for estate planning and did all of the education I could do to become competent in what was a new practice area. Really, I had exposure to all of the things that someone has to have in place to have a comprehensive estate plan, but I had not done the drafting of those documents. So I had to become competent on the subject matter. And I had to learn how to network and build relationships with others in the industry and in related industries. So there were plenty of things that I could have, plenty of opportunities to talk myself out of it. But I think for me, the big game changer was having such an amazing support system of family and friends, people in the building that I work in, encouraging me to do this. And so I'm so thankful I
Yeah.
didn't give in to all of those doubts because there were many. And when I really got this started, it was the beginning of I started in 2019, but it was the beginning of 2020 when I went full time all in on this. And that presented some serious challenges. I can remember
Yes.
I knew I needed to join a a networking group that was a formal setting that would get me more comfortable with speaking and doing things that I just had not had to do for a while. And
Yeah.
so I joined a group and it met exclusively online, which seemed a little bit strange, but it turned out to be a really great introductory thing for me to get into that space because the speaking was online instead of in front of a group of people. And something about that made it seem less intimidating to
Definitely. I think you hit on something there that I don't think we talk, I don't, or at least I don't talk about very often, but a lot of times, especially when you're starting off, unless you're going into like a business where you have a ton of capital behind you or investors or things of that nature to just hire staff or things of that nature, you become the person that has to figure things out. Right. And so I joke with people that it's like, I've just built that muscle of like, yeah, I'm just going to figure it out. Like, because ultimately, you have to, right? It's kind of your back's against the wall in those scenarios, and it's like, okay, well, there's nobody else to rely on. This is this wins or loses based on me. You know what I mean? And so either I'm going to
yes.
learn that skill set, I'm going to learn how to do those certain things, or yeah, this is going to fail, and then I'm going to have to go do something different, right? And so to
Yeah,
me, there's almost a mindset shift that you have to have where you're like, all right, yeah, you got to build that figure it out muscle, or like, who do I call to figure it out faster, right? So like everybody learns
absolutely.
differently, but that's a massive
Yes,
thing that I don't think we talk about very often as business
I
owners.
agree. I agree. I think that a big part of my success was intentionally surrounding myself with people who had made it work. And so, if that meant scheduling coffee or lunch, whatever we needed to do so that I could get in front of these people and gain wisdom from them, that made a huge difference for me because
Big time.
they were doing it. And another thing, as far as, yeah, if I don't know the answer, I know that I have to go find it, right? There's no one
Right.
I can't walk down the hall and ask someone.
Right.
And so you become very resourceful and you're honest with people and you gain credibility with people. If a client asks me something that I don't know the answer to, I flat out say, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out.
Yeah, that right there, it's funny. I have a newer client and I was very honest with them and I was like, "Hey, listen, I've never done there was a certain automation we were building and I told her I'm like, "I've never done this before." And she just looked at me and she's like, "Oh, I can tell you'll figure it out." And I was like, for whatever reason, there was just the confidence of me being like so brutally honest with her, like, "Hey, I'm not sure, this
Yes.
might take me a little bit longer." But it was almost because we had had such honest conversations up until that point. She was like, "No, you're good." And there was kind of that reflection back of like, "Oh, okay, yeah, like I can figure stuff out, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or I can at least find somebody that'll help me." Right. So,
Yes. And sometimes, I mean, like in your case, you feel that that person for a little bit, you're like, well, maybe they have a little bit more confidence in me than I do. I got to change
right.
that, right? I got to change that. One of my closest friends who really took a very similar career path as me, we met working in-house at that large oil and gas company when I started to make the transition, and she was making a similar transition. And I wanted to do probate work. And I remember asking her, how exactly, like, what do you think the steps are to getting started? And she said, well, first, you say that you're a probate lawyer. And I thought, hmm. She's like, no, you just say, yeah, I'm a probate lawyer. And that was such a mindset and identity shift for me. And I still tell her, like, I think if you hadn't said that to me, I would not have taken this case that came in 2021. This case came in, and I, for some reason, said, sure, I'll take it. Well, it was a huge case. It led me to meet and connect with an attorney that's been doing this for 40 years and is an incredible expert in the field. We worked on these cases together. They took us about 3 years. I mean, I learned so much about probate law because she said to me, you say that you're a probate lawyer.
Mindset is such a massive thing, and I think you hear a lot of the TikTok videos or wherever, like a lot of those like motivational things, but living it is much harder, especially when you're in an office or a house or somewhere by yourself. Like you have a lot of time to think, right? And so I think that the mindset aspect of that is so important because ultimately the mental battle that you wind up playing as a business owner a lot of times is it's a struggle, and it can be a struggle at times, and then you have those moments where you look back like you just said and you're like, oh man, that one little phrase got me into this position and I learned so much here.
Yeah, that was a game changer. Yeah.
And you have those little aha moments sometimes when you're able to look back. That's been a big thing for me over the past couple of years, is realizing some of the things that happened where I was like, I don't know why this is happening, or I got introduced to a certain person. And then I look back and I'm like, oh man, the trickle effect of everything that's come just from that one
Yes.
conversation or that one person. And sometimes you just don't know because you're just so focused forward on like figuring it out, right? Especially in the
Yes.
beginning, that you don't have the
Yes.
perspective yet of those little things that make such a massive difference in the long run.
I had to just live by the mantra of just do the next right thing. And so, if the next right thing was scheduling a lunch or watching an online continuing education seminar, that's what I did that day. And I knew the only way I could do it was taking it day by day in the very beginning, right? Because my book of business, my days weren't full with work. So,
Yeah.
what do I need to do to get there? I need to build relationships. So that's how I tried to fill my time. It was either education or relationships.
Yeah. I think the the mantra that I don't know if I want to call it a mantra. I set a reminder on my phone every morning that just says like, what are you doing today that your future self is going to thank you for? And
Oh, that's
so
great.
I've just been trying, because like you play those games, like I was just saying, like you play those mental games with yourself, right? Like you had like, okay, what do I have to do today that's just going to continue to push me forward? And that for me has been something I literally have the reminder on my phone every morning. So it pops up on my computer and my phone, and it's like, okay, what are you doing today that your future self will thank you for? And it's like, that a lot of times will shift me into the mindset of like, okay, what am I doing that I need to do consistently? That in a year from now, I'm going to look back and be like, oh, I'm so glad I did that, a year ago, whatever
Yes.
that is.
And it can be the tiniest thing, but you show up and you do it consistently, and it just has this cumulative effect over time.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you and I talked about that I think is another huge aspect of your success and I'm sure there's multiple things. It's just the one thing that really stuck out to me the last time we talked was the networking, right? Like that was such a massive piece. And I think it's very easy today because of this. Like I'm in Wisconsin right now, you're in Oklahoma, right? So we're able to do stuff like this because of technology. And I think that that's amazing. But the actual getting in front of people, developing those relationships, letting people not just see you behind a camera, but actually shake your hand, have a cup of coffee, all of those sort of things
Yes.
are so imperative. And I think it just gets very easy with technology today. And I'd love for you to talk a little more about that and like the things that you did just in creating those relationships, because I think that's so important, especially now with technology.
Yeah. One thing that I tried to focus on were what are some causes that I believe in? How do I get involved in if I get involved in something that's meaningful to me, then I feel like the connections are easy, right? Making those connections are easier. So serving on the board of directors for organizations that I'm passionate about, that's been a big one. That's connected me with many like-minded people. And showing up consistently in those roles shows to others that that's how you are. You show up. You're consistent. You do what you say you're going to do. And unfortunately, that's a complaint that people often have about attorneys, that they don't do what they said they were going to do. Well, I didn't want that. I don't want that to be
Right.
someone's perception of me and my business. So showing up consistently in those roles was a big thing. This one sounds funny. This sounds silly. When, those years of me working as on title opinions, I could work in my house, I could work at an office, it didn't matter. I didn't have personal one-on-one connection with people. So one of the first things I did was, okay, well, if you're going to be an estate planning and a probate attorney, you need to dress like one, right? Because you're going to have hearings and client meetings and signing meetings. So I changed how I dressed every day, even if I didn't have a meeting or a networking event. And that was a mindset shift for me. It sounds silly, but it really was. It was a mindset identity type of shift for me.
I don't think that sounds silly at all. I will tell you, I struggle with that because I was the kid in high school, senior year, that just wore shorts and sweatpants like all the time. Like I just like being
Mm-hmm.
comfy naturally. But that is something that for me, I've actually been trying to just go work at a coffee shop for like a half a day a week or something along those lines that's making me like put on nicer clothes or put on, you know what I mean? Like doing those sort of things. And now I'm not wearing like a suit and tie or anything because like what I do, I don't think really requires that. But I think it's so what you're saying is not, in my opinion, funny at all because there is that aspect of like getting up and getting ready for your job, right? And
Yes.
ultimately, like when you're first starting your business, you have a job, right? Until you're hiring
Mm-hmm.
people and you're managing people and then you become the real owner, right? Even though you own the business. But like I don't think that's funny at all. I think I've struggled with that, if I'm being honest, being able to
Well, I
do that
mean,
on a daily basis.
I knew that I had to be, I didn't, naturally feel comfortable walking into a networking luncheon or a networking coffee where you had a few minutes to share about your business, right? So I at least needed to look like I belonged in that space, even if I didn't feel like it. And then that eventually came.
Big time. Yeah.
Mm.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think the world that you work in as well too, there is that a little bit more of, how is somebody dressed, or how are they presenting themselves and that sort of thing. But I do,
Yes, yeah.
as we're not getting to the end here, we have about 10 more minutes or so, but I'd love to give you an opportunity to really talk about like the specific clients that you're working for. Like, who is it that you're really looking to work with, and who do you feel like you really can help the most?
Interestingly, we work with many out of state clients that are trying to solve some sort of confusion or mystery with oil and gas interests in Oklahoma. Maybe they've been contacted by someone that says, hey, it looks like you have unclaimed property with the Oklahoma State Treasurer. Let us help you get it. We'll take half. They usually offer to help them, but they want half of it. And thankfully, many of them will find us online and reach out about how can you help us with this. Usually we have to do a probate, right, to get those funds out of the unclaimed property fund, or maybe the money is with an oil and gas operator and they're not going to release it without a court order because the amount is substantial and it's in the name of a deceased owner. So I think that the feedback says that we provide a great deal of value to the out-of-state clients who they're not familiar with oil and gas in Oklahoma. Why would they be, right? So
Right.
what they're receiving in the mail is super confusing. It's very confusing if you're not familiar with the industry. And B, we are readily available to them, answer all of their questions, and we can handle the probate in Oklahoma without them having to travel here. I have not had I don't think I've had a single case of that nature for an out of state client where they actually had to travel here to be here in person for the court hearings. We can usually handle those for them. And it's such a relief to them because we understand whatever county we're dealing with, right? We have to go to that county to have the hearing for the probate. We're comfortable doing that for them. And we can communicate with the oil and gas operator to figure out what it is they want. That's who we ultimately have to satisfy. We've got to
Sure.
meet their requirements to get this mystery solved. So I don't think that when I started this, I anticipated how many of our clients would be outside of Oklahoma dealing with Oklahoma property.
Yeah,
That's a big part of our work.
I didn't expect that either, to be honest. We didn't get into that in our last conversation. I thought it was more
Okay.
just focused in Oklahoma. So that's
Yes.
awesome. That's really awesome though, because I'm sure, I can only imagine, like, especially being from Wisconsin and things, you're not dealing with oil and gas. It's not something that is around you. Now, being in Oklahoma, I realize that is a much more prevalent thing, right? Um,
Right.
so yeah, so I can definitely see how being somebody that maybe has never been familiar with that world, how that could be, just not sure what to do, right?
No,
And it's
it's really a foreign language when you receive something from an oil and gas company or the unclaimed property department. So we help explain and unravel those mysteries for people. And then on the estate planning side of things, our ideal client is anyone who owns assets and doesn't want their family to have to go through probate when they pass away. So usually one of the sources of our estate planning work is someone comes to us, they have to do a probate in Oklahoma, and we finish the probate and they say, okay, what do we need to do so that our family doesn't have to go through this? So if they are an Oklahoma resident, we can do their Oklahoma estate plan for them. So, I think people have the idea that estate planning is for people who are maybe 65 and older. But the reality is, we do a great deal of estate planning for people who have minor children and own a home and maybe have one LLC, right? By all standards, they don't have a huge estate, but they have something to protect. They have minor children. They maybe have a substantial life insurance policy. Do they want their kids, if they pass away, do they want their kids to have access to that at 18, just unrestricted? Probably not. So we can put things in place to protect that asset. So on the estate planning side, I wouldn't say that, it's a client of a certain age. There's a pretty wide variety there.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of times people don't think they need certain things until somebody around them goes through something or they go through something, right? And so I think on the estate planning side, that's awesome to know that you do handle, because for me, I have a decent understanding of it now, right? But even,
Hmm.
10 years ago, I just thought like, oh, estate planning's for like millionaires. Like that's it. Like people
Yes.
that own, a ton of assets and that sort of thing. And then you realize like, no, it doesn't have to be that, but there's still those things that you need to consider if you have a family and kids and that sort of thing. And so um, I just think that information right there for so many people is I think is a nugget that a lot of people should pay more attention to.
They should. There are also pretty basic estate planning things that we can put into place to avoid probate, or at least highly increase the likelihood of avoiding probate when you pass away. So it doesn't have to be a complex plan, but it's worth it for everyone to explore it and see what they could put into place and if that would be worth it to them. And most of the time, it is worth it to them once they understand and we dispel some of the common misconceptions that people have out there. The big one is that, well, I have a will. Yes, you have a will. That will has to be probated in district court. There is a misconception out there that if you have a will, your estate won't have to be probated. And that's just incorrect.
Yeah, and I think, well, I won't go into that. I'm not going to make that comment about the government and wanting them to, have control over
Yeah.
certain things. We won't go there in this conversation. But no, I think that is, I think if, the people that are listening and seeing this video, I think that's something that's super important is like, for me, I've always taken the route of I'd rather have a conversation with somebody that knows way more than I do, just to make sure, right? I was somebody that got life
Absolutely.
insurance at a very young age, like compared to most people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, although I don't have kids, like I know that at least other family members are taken care of and, causes that I care about. But I think a lot of times it's just the finding somebody that's willing to have that conversation. And I think you guys have done an amazing job of just cultivating that sort of relationship and reputation, right? Of just being open to having those conversations with people.
Yes, and something that I have tried to do more of is to get in front of different groups and speak about the topic because there's so much misinformation out there. And I mean, we say this all the time, but it applies to any industry that you're not super familiar with. You don't know what you don't know. So why
Right.
not educate yourself?
I love it. I completely agree. And I think when you come across individuals like yourself that are willing to share that information, fully taking advantage of that is like imperative for people, right? So I love that. Well, as we wrap up here, Brooke, I want to first of all thank you for dropping just knowledge that some of it I didn't have either, which is awesome, just even in this conversation. But I'd love for you if we'll kind of end this on the business owner note. If there's one thing that you just want maybe people that are thinking about getting into business, or maybe they're in their first 6 months or their first year, like what are some of the things that you want them to know that maybe you went through that you're either glad you did or just words of wisdom would be awesome.
Sure. I think a big one for me was realizing that nobody's going to care about your business as much as you do, ever. So accept that early on because they're not going to. You are going to have to work your tail off. We hear all of these things about work smarter, not harder. Well, I don't know a successful business owner who didn't have to just, put their nose to the ground and work their tail off for years before it gets to the point of hiring others and getting all of those systems and processes in place where you can delegate. So, yes, that's the goal, but be aware that that's going to take some time. And I think you've got to be kind to yourself. I think anyone who decides, I'm just going to start my own business and do that, we are people who expect a great deal of ourselves. So there's a ton of pressure that we put on ourselves. And it does require some patience, but you need to accept that you are just going to have to work really hard to make it successful. And then all of a sudden it kind of starts, you know, it starts working itself a little bit too.
Big time. Those were very, very true words that hit me directly because, yeah, everything you just said is completely true. And so, again, Brooke, I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to continuing to see you just grow the firm that you
Well, thank
have
you.
and just everything that you have going on. So, thanks so much for your
That's
time
the
today.
plan.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet.